Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 22.
We're back with another episode of Let's Be Well Together. And Sammy, you were telling me something about something you saw posted about signs of high-functioning anxiety. And I was wondering if we could chat about that.
For sure. Yeah. So my friend actually posted this story onto her Instagram, and I decided to go and take a screenshot because I felt like it was something that I really resonated with and felt like, I just felt like I could be in that column. So the post was describing high-functioning anxiety, and it kind of had two columns. It said on the outside and on the inside.
Okay, so the outside is how people see you.
So, and then the inside's what's going on.
Okay.
In your head. And the thing with like high functioning anxiety, you'll come off as someone who's like a really good worker. So, or just like very, successful. And people don't understand, they don't see it as this person could be having anxiety right now. They just see like, oh, they're a very successful person. They don't need any help. They're good. So some examples here is on the outside, hardworking, and on the inside, overthinking. So you're just constantly, you look like you're working really hard, but on the inside, you're just constantly overthinking of what can be better, what can I do, what should be the next step. I should always be planning like 5 steps ahead.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people are in general, especially when you are a successful person, because you're kind of taught to almost overlook the reason of why.
In some jobs, so my job, I'm a litigation lawyer. Mm-hmm. I'm almost trained to figure out if something's going to go wrong, what's going to go wrong.
Is it?
And then I start thinking about that, and then that carries with me outside my work. And so I'm like, oh no, all this is going to go wrong. How do I prevent it?
Yeah, which is almost impossible, right? You can't always prepare for the worst thing or even the best thing.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to sometimes be in the moment.
I'm going to come back to this quote, I'm sure, many times, but it's because it's one I love, but it's something to the effect, I've had a lot of troubles in my life, none of which happened.
Right. Yeah.
because I'm always like thinking it's going to happen, but it never does happen. But anyway.
Yeah, I get that too. I'll go over like different scenarios in my head of like what I think is going to happen. Like I'm going to confront this person about something they did last week that upset me. And I'm going over and I'm like, they're going to respond like this. And I'm going to respond like this. It's going to escalate. But then it happens and I'm like, oh, that was fine. Like I got so I just got overworked and I was just overthinking and getting really nervous and hyping myself up almost to think for the worst when then it doesn't happen. Then it doesn't happen. So then I had like that anxiety for a whole week.
Yeah, I think we're on one of those columns. So what are some of the other examples?
Yeah, so a couple of the other examples of the on the outside will be things like detail-oriented, high-achieving, ambitious, perfectionist, organized, well-prepared, calm, does well under pressure, which the does well under pressure I felt like really resonated with me because that's something people always say. Like when I'm under pressure, that's almost when I work my best. And then on the inside, things that could be happening is overwhelmed, burnt out, trouble saying no, need to be busy, unrealistic expectations, people pleasing, fear of failure, and self-doubt. And I really, when I look on the inside, I think like that like very much resembled me.
Right.
And I was like, maybe I have this high functioning anxiety. I've talked to my doctor a little bit about some anxieties. I've never been diagnosed with anxiety or anything like that. But I think just kind of being aware and understanding like this could be actually an issue or a struggle or a challenge of something that I'm dealing with, especially like trouble saying no. I have such a hard time saying no because I think that if I say no, then people are never going to ask me again. And then I get anxious that I'm just going to be pushed out of helping or being there for my friends or
you're not dependable.
No,
I'm really glad you're bringing this forward because one of the keys is self-awareness.
Yeah.
We don't know what the answer is, but at least if we can start to be self-aware and if people try and think about, okay, well, I'm getting these compliments, but what's really going on inside my head?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Are there any, I don't want to call them tricks, are there any techniques that work for you if you're feeling anxiety to at least lessen it?
Yeah. For me, I'm sure it's different with everybody. For me, I find activity, going out on a walk will really help. or, doing yoga, that kind of stuff. But I think like the biggest thing I'm working on is setting boundaries, because I have a hard time having those boundaries with especially like friends and family, people who I want them to have to like lean on me and be there. But sometimes it's to the point of where I can't handle it and I'm giving all of me that I have nothing left for myself. Right. So I think like setting those boundaries is really important, and telling people if they're asking for too much, being like, I cannot take this on right now. Even they say this on, I've seen some people talk on TikTok and on Instagram about if someone comes to you and, they have a really big issue, or if you're someone who has something that you need to get off your chest, it's good to ask the person that you're confiding in if they have enough mental capacity and mental space for you to talk to. So, because sometimes maybe that person, they have a lot going on and they don't actually have the mental capacity to then take on your anxieties, which I thought was really interesting.
Especially because, again, it's nice how things are starting to dovetail and work together. We talked about toxic positivity.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling stressed or whatever, you come to talk to me. Mm-hmm. If I'm not in the right frame of mind, I'm going to end up being toxic and positive in that sense. Exactly. I'm just going to say, yeah, well, because I can't deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost better just to be upfront and say, you know what, right now, like I have a lot on my plate and I don't have the capacity to really be here for you in this moment. Not that I'll never be there for you.
Right.
I'm not there for you. Just right now, it's hard for me to take that on as well.
Maybe, I don't know, just brainstorming, maybe if you came to me and I was in that state of mind and you were in that state of mind, I would say, Sammy, why don't we just go for a walk and not talk? Let's just, I do have half an hour.
Yep.
I'm not in the right frame of mind to listen meaningfully, and I want to.
Yeah.
So when you tell me about this, I want to be there.
Yeah.
Why don't we just go for a walk and get some fresh air?
Exactly. Go to a yoga class and just be mindful, maybe like just something to maybe, yeah, that's a good idea, that you guys can be supporting each other, but not by having to listen and take on someone else's struggles in that moment. Right.
It's a really interesting point. I've never thought of that. The fact that, you really, it's hard to reach out to someone in the first place.
Yeah.
You don't want to say no.
Because you don't want that person to feel more alone. And
I think it's rare too. I think that combination of situations happening at the same time will be rare, but it's really something to keep in mind. I often feel a lot of, I feel a lot of the inside stuff on those columns too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say the outside stuff about me too.
Yeah.
It's been a real struggle for me my whole life to stop my mind from spinning. But there are some things that work for me, and we talk a lot about them on the show. Mm-hmm. I like to go for runs.
Right.
I like to go for a walk in the forest, especially on a trail.
Yeah.
Art seems to, especially music.
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to realize is so many of these things that stop the spinning are things that bring me to a moment, like bring me to the present moment. Mm-hmm. If I can get back to the present moment, and that's another one of the focuses in terms of my book and everything else is physicality.
Yeah.
If I can focus on my physicality and do something physical, so I can feel my muscles moving, I can feel my breath, I can all these things, and I can with my senses hear music, or with my eyes see art.
Yeah.
And that staves it off to a degree.
For sure. Yeah. And that's something I actually learned in my one course at University of Waterloo. And it was when you're feeling these anxieties, to think of like your five senses. So name one thing that you can see, one thing that you can hear, one thing that you can smell, taste, and there's one other. Touch?
We'll
Should I say
it out.
touch? Yeah. Something like that. So the five senses. So if you can list something like of those five senses that kind of brings you back to the moment, it helps those anxieties and everything that's going on in your head to come back to the present.
On one perspective, you're saying people are looking at me and seeing these things, but inside, I've got to be self-aware what's going on inside.
Yeah.
But another thing I like about what you've pointed out to me is that I might see other people doing those same things. I'm not going to assume everything's perfect.
Yes.
I'm going to leave space for them to say, I'm not having a good day.
Yeah.
And then how can I help?
Yeah. Or if someone, like, especially at work, if you're like, hey, coworker, I need your help. Can you take on this extra project? And if they say no, you shouldn't look at them like they're less than, but more look at them like they're setting a boundary and they're doing what's best for them. And in that moment, they cannot take on another project. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
make sure that they can.
Yeah.
So we're just wrapping up, and I won't want to get, this is maybe a discussion for another day, but I can't help but wonder. I mean, a lot of people in my generation feel this.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised to find out that if way more people in your generation have this issue because of the way the world works now, how instant, immediate everything from social media to getting emails after working hours to, people wanting instantaneous replies to texts and everything like that. So
for sure,
I think it's a really important topic for everyone to think about.
I agree.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of mental wellness, and I'm talking with a friend and colleague, Stephanie Sutherland. We both give our time to our profession as trustees with our local Waterloo Region Law Association. Stephanie's been a lawyer since 2009. She's worked extensively in the world of condominium law. She guides her clients through disputes in a way that promotes and fosters positive condominium communities. She also provides legal services for condominium development, residential and commercial real estate, and commercial litigation. Stephanie's an active volunteer, sitting on the board of the Guelph Humane Society, the University of Guelph's Research Ethics Board, and Damaren Homes for Recovery, where she's been the president of the board since 2013. Stephanie's also a proud member of the Zonta Club of Guelph, and she volunteers as a foster parent for the Guelph Humane Society and All Creatures Rescue. In her spare time, Stephanie enjoys spending time with her family and friends, including her partner and her stepson, and their many animals, especially their dogs, Leah and Veda. Welcome, Stephanie, and thanks for sharing. I know it's challenging to share personal information, but our hope is that it will help people, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are interested in hearing your experiences with ADHD. And just to describe that to people who don't know the initials, I think it's Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It deals with differences in brain development and brain activity that affect attention, the ability to sit still, self-control, and other things. And is that also correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm just trying to frame myself. So I understand that you were recently diagnosed with ADHD, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, it was actually just in the last few months. I've had difficulties with concentrating and that kind of thing for a long time, and I always kind of thought it was part of my depression because it's also a symptom of depression. But then I was reading a fictional novel, and one of the characters experienced executive dysfunction, and I'd never heard that term, so I looked it up, and I thought, oh, that's exactly what I have. And then I was looking into it more and researching it, and one of the most common reasons people have executive dysfunction is because they have ADHD. Then I thought, well, I'm not hyperactive. I've never been hyperactive, so obviously I don't have ADHD. But then it turns out there's another version of ADHD, which is the attention deficit part, not the hyperactive part. And reading more about that made it very clear to me that was going on with that's what was going on with my brain. So I went to my doctor and got the diagnosis.
And was it just that straightforward? You just go to your doctor and say, I think I have something that I was reading about. Is that accurate?
For me, it was. I'm very fortunate. I have a really great doctor who I've been going to for, I think, about 10 years now. She knows me well. I think she trusts my judgment on things. And so she said, based on everything that I was telling her, she was very comfortable making that diagnosis. She did give me a prescription to go to a psychiatrist to get a diagnosis, which I haven't done because it turns out that's not covered by health insurance or OHIP or anything, and it's really expensive. So I was very lucky that my doctor, felt comfortable giving me the diagnosis and was able to do that.
Can we just go back? I think you said something about executive function or dysfunction?
Executive dysfunction.
Okay. Can you just explain what executive dysfunction is?
Oh, it's hard to explain, but it's your brain just doesn't really focus on things or hold on to things, right? So I have a really good example. The other day I was making coffee in the coffee maker, and I put in the grounds and I put in the filter and I put in the water, and then I noticed that the top of the lid had some calcium scaling. So I'm like, oh, I should probably clean that before I start making the coffee. So I did that, and great, that's all done. So I put the lid down, I press start. I come upstairs, I'm in a meeting, a virtual meeting, and my partner messages me and says, usually we put the carafe in the coffee maker when we make coffee, because my brain had decided that instead of focusing on coffee, it was now going to focus on cleaning the coffee maker, and just completely dropped that last step of the process.
And so that's something that you when you read about executive dysfunction and what that meant, you recognize that you were having those types of experiences on an ongoing basis.
Yes, very ongoing.
Okay. And so what are some examples where ADHD has impacted you both in your life and maybe in your career? And when you look back now, you can see how, had you known earlier, it would have made more sense.
So in school, I used to fall asleep in class very easily. And I just thought, I'm bored, especially if the teacher put on a movie and turned off the lights. That was it. I was out. I could not stay awake no matter how interesting it was. And it turns out that my brain just really needs to focus on or have multiple different stimuli going on in order for me to be able to focus specifically on something, right? So if I'm having a conversation with someone, if I'm playing a game on my phone, that actually lets me focus on the conversation better, because I'm making my brain, I'm keeping my brain busy, so it's not trying to wander off and it's not losing focus. That's a real problem that I had in school, and even into university, I had that issue. And in terms of, work, again, the difficulty concentrating, thinking that I've sent emails that I haven't, completely forgetting about emails. So basically, I've joked for years, if something isn't in my calendar, it doesn't exist. If I don't have something written down in a to-do list, it's not going to get done.
And I take it what you're describing is what happened before you had your diagnosis. And I'm wondering, now that you've had your diagnosis, are there things like medication? Are there things like coping mechanisms that help, and now you're experiencing things in a different way, or you don't have those same issues?
Yes, definitely. So my doctor did give me a prescription, and that has definitely helped. But also coping mechanisms are very helpful. And some of them I was already doing without even recognizing that I was doing them, like the calendar, for example, right? Putting things in my calendar and my to-do lists. In the mornings when I go to work and I'm packing up my bag, I always forget something. So now I have a list of the things that I want to bring, and I check the list and make sure that I have everything before I go out the door. Just kind of recognizing that there are certain things that my brain is not going to do well. So figuring out how to navigate that and kind of give myself reminders to make sure that I'm getting it done.
So now there's a little extra planning and preparation before you do things, and that tends to help.
Yes.
The other thing you mentioned when we first talked about this topic is comorbidity and mental health disorders. What, if anything, can you tell us about things like that? You mentioned earlier something about depression.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with depression, major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety, to use all the big words, in, I think it was 2013. So, I've been on medication for that and done some CBT therapy, et cetera. And overall, it goes, with depression, it goes up and down. There's good days and bad days, but overall, it's managed pretty well, which is one of the reasons why I was confused about the fact that I still had such difficulty concentrating, because I kind of would have thought that was the one thing that the depression medication really didn't address at all, or didn't change or improve. I've done a lot of reading on it, and the amount of comorbidity between mental health issues is just, and whether, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation, right? Like, do I have anxiety because I feel like I'm always forgetting something or missing something? Or do I have anxiety and that's impacting my brain and making my ADHD worse? Who knows? But they definitely interact with each other.
Do you think it's possible that ADHD goes unnoticed? Because if someone says, well, I know I have issues with depression and anxiety, and so you just don't think that maybe there's also this ADHD issue.
Absolutely. I had almost 10 years of a diagnosis of depression and anxiety before it even occurred to me that ADHD might be a factor as well.
The other thing that struck me when you first talked to me about this was the impact on women. You mentioned that it's common for girls and women to be underdiagnosed or diagnosed later in life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mentioned when I first started talking about this that I was looking at, reasons for executive dysfunction, and ADHD was one of them. And initially I thought, well, that can't be what I have, because all I'd ever heard about ADHD was the hyperactivity, right? Kids running around and not being able to sit still. I have no problem sitting still.
I have to tell you that's what I thought of when you said ADHD.
Yeah, that's what I would venture to guess the vast majority of people think when you think of ADHD. And then I was reading more about it, and it turns out that as a general rule, not obviously 100% all the time, but girls and women tend to express their ADHD in terms of the attention deficit side of things. So, everything I've been talking about, the difficulty concentrating, the difficulty remembering things and focusing, and that gets overlooked, especially if you're someone who does well in school anyway. So, the teachers understandably aren't focusing on you. They're focusing on the kids who are having a difficulty getting through the day. It's definitely an underdiagnosed issue in women and girls. And I hope that that's going to change as we become more aware of that as an issue.
Let me just hone in on that a little bit. Attention deficit. So you've given a couple examples, but let's just try and explain that a little bit more. So attention deficit, you're having a difficult time paying attention to something that you're working on now. How would you describe it? Okay.
Yeah.
And that could be for different reasons?
I think, I don't really know what the cause is. I'm sure it's brain chemistry or something, but basically it's just that for whatever reason, your brain can't focus, or it's not lack of interest, because it can be something that's very interesting. It's just, my brain just doesn't want to latch on to something, or I am focused for a while and then my brain says, no, that's enough. We're not going to focus on this anymore. We need to do something else, which is another coping mechanism that I've developed, right? Just when I recognize that my brain is getting to that stage, I say, okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to do something else. We're going to refresh, because I have to realize that I've lost focus and I'm not going to get anything productive done.
And when you mean focus, you mean on whatever the task is at hand. You can concentrate on it for a while, but then at a certain point you have difficulty concentrating on the task at hand, and you either shift your thinking to something else or you turn to something else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you can believe it, I say this to every guest, by the way. We're already burning through our time. So
I believe it.
Is there any? I don't want to stop you though. Is there anything that you wanted to chat about or enlighten people about that I didn't cover and that you'd like to speak about?
I think, we did touch on it briefly, but the difficulty of getting a diagnosis, because I posted on social media, I like to be very open about my mental health struggles, because I find that encourages other people to talk about it. And when I posted about my diagnosis, I had a lot of women, colleagues and, friends that are my age and even older, saying, I think that might be what's going on with me too. And it turns out that for most people, it's not easy to get a diagnosis. It can be very difficult to get an appointment. It can be very costly. It's easy for me to say, but I think it's still really important to get that diagnosis and to figure out a way to cope with it. But I also think that the more we pay attention to this issue and recognize that it's a problem, then hopefully it will become easier for women especially to get that diagnosis.
It does sound like you were very lucky, because if you hadn't had the doctor who was willing to listen and trust and dive into it and make that diagnosis, it would have been a lot more difficult to try and connect. First of all, even connect with a psychiatrist, and then obviously the expense associated with it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for that. So there's a question I ask every guest at the end of the interview. Our show is about wellness and different categories of wellness. And so what we talk about is trying to achieve balance, which of course is almost impossible. At any given time, there'll be some area that we're probably faltering on a little bit. And so I like to ask guests this, which is, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness? And if you are, can you think of one activity that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Yes. Does anybody ever say no, that they're not currently neglecting one of the areas? No, I definitely am. Physical, probably the most. Coming out of winter and the depression, I'm very bad at getting outside and getting myself exercise. But I'm trying to be better about making myself go out for walks with my dog. So I'm hoping to improve on that.
Well, that's good. I can tell you that some of the people we've spoken with, Beth Beatty's a good example, pointed out that in their experience, the physical activity works as much as medication when it comes to feeling good and working on, in her case, mental health issues. So I wish you lots of luck in getting out, especially with the dogs, because that's even more fun. And I really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us.
Okay. Thanks so much, John.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. This week, life has been throwing a theme at me over and over, and it took me a few tries to catch it. But the theme is time and being present in the moment. So I used to think that this was my default, like that's just how I lived. I'm here, duh, what else do you want, right? But this week, it was made very clear to me that that's not how I've been living. And it was an interesting experience, so let me tell you about it. On Tuesday of last week, I was wrapping up my last student of the day. And on Tuesdays, among other days, I tend to teach quite late. This particular day, I finished at 9:30 out in Canada, which, from where I live, is about a half-hour drive just over. So I'm finishing the lesson, and I'm bringing his dad up to speed on how well he's doing and what the homework is this week. And the dad and I start shooting the breeze about what summer might look like. And then, we start talking about how, there's the teaching really slows down as people take vacations. And yes, that means we could look at a different day and time and all that good stuff. And then he asks me what, going forward in the summer, what things look like, even outside of lessons, just making conversation, right? And I explain, since the teaching really slows down, July's filled up with wedding gigs, which is really great. But I'll be driving all over the place. So it's, up and down, good stuff, just lots of running around. And he says, man, you got to slow down. You got to slow down. And I, didn't take that in a good or a bad way. Just, okay, something to think about. So I hop in the car, I'm driving home, and like I said, it's about a half hour, so that's a fair amount of time to mull some things over. And I thought about what he said, but I didn't really see an opportunity or a benefit to trying to slow things down, so I didn't think much of it. Got home, 10 o'clock, made dinner, cleaned up, brushed your teeth, hit the hay, do it all again. Later on that week, it was Friday night, and I was finishing up a lesson on Zoom with two twins that I call the E's. Both of them, their names start with E. So one of the E's is studying drums, and the other E is studying piano. And both of them are trying to work up to submit to a contest for Long and McQuaid, which is great. Always important to have a goal to work towards, whether it's a live performance or a video submission. And each of these guys has worked super hard over the past couple of weeks to lock in the piece and the parts thereof, but they're both at the stage where their timing is a bit loose. And so this week, they've been tasked with playing to a metronome. For the uninitiated, that's a little handy device that goes and helps keep track of your time, tempo. And so at the end of the lesson, we go over the homework quick, and I say, all right, guys, both of you this week are working on metronome. You're going to be locked into that click. Don't get ahead. Don't fall behind. Stay right in that pocket. And they're like, you got it, Have a good weekend. And then they like to tell me jokes. So they told me a joke each, and that was that. And as I hung up the Zoom call and it faded out, I thought to myself, geez, that was almost applicable to my own life. Like, stay in the pocket. Don't get ahead. Don't fall behind. And I was thinking a bit about earlier in the week when I was told, hey, you got to slow down. And so I geared up for my walk to clear my head and change gears from teaching into weekend and all that good stuff. And I'm taking in the sunset, and I caught myself really moving. Like, I was hustling. Like, I should try this for a second. So I physically slowed down, which felt weird to sort of deliberately cut my pace down like that. But I did. I started to saunter would be the right word. And the walk really came alive. That's the best way I can describe it. The first thing I remember really noticing was that even though I could hear all these things before, I was now actively listening to things like the breeze rustling the leaves or birds chirping. The way the wind would hit my ear and kind of do that sound. Just really listening and being in the moment more. And then there was this palpable sensation, and this is weird. Maybe this is, I don't know. Some of you might be familiar with this. I certainly wasn't. But this feeling of like a knot kind of under my belly button sort of untied and melted away. Melted is the right word. It melted away. And I felt much better overall. So going forward this week, it's going to be my goal to try and foster that being present in the moment feeling and actually just being present and making an active decision to like check in and am I scatterbrained? Am I thinking 6 steps ahead? Am I living in a past moment right now? Like, be here. So, yeah, to come full circle, like I said, I used to think that was my default. It clearly isn't, but I'm going to try and get there. So that's what I'm working on this week. On the musical front, like I said, lessons are really slowing down over this week. And coming up, it's wedding after wedding after wedding. So I'm looking forward to being a part of a number of people's special days. And I'm honored to be part of that. For now, though, that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do. And here we are with Move That Body. It's Sheila, and my guest today is Elise.
Hello.
Hey, so a few years ago, we did buy you guys bikes for Christmas, you and your husband, and I've noticed that you've been using them a lot. So let's talk about that for Move Your Body.
Definitely. We love to use our bikes. They're beautiful, and biking is just a great way to get around.
Mm-hmm. And Elise and I have matching bikes. Well, they're the same bikes. So they have a really nice basket on them, and you don't have to throw your leg over. They're touring bikes, so they have a nice big seat. And
you feel very tall. You don't feel like you have to crunch over to ride it. So it's good for your back, I find.
I agree. Yeah.
But I love the basket. We like to take our bikes and go for picnics.
Oh, yeah.
So I put some food into our basket. And the amazing feature of our basket is it can remove from the bike. So you could just press a button and you can pick up the basket. So you could just take it to your picnic spot and then you're ready to go.
And I thought that would be really cool too if you're going grocery shopping.
That's true.
You know, you could just take the basket off and off you go into the grocery store and pick up your stuff and then put it like you've already got it and then just attach it back to your bike.
Definitely. I used to live in South Korea, and the town that I lived, or the city that I lived in, had public bikes that had baskets. So
that were removable? No.
So I was just thinking, I wish those ones were removable because I would go grocery shopping all the time, have to lug my bags into the basket.
Yeah.
But the removable basket feature is amazing.
Amazing.
And I get compliments on it all the time because I do ride my bike to work.
Oh, very good. And how far is that?
It's about 2 kilometers.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. Except for the hill. So the town that I live in has a large number of hills, considering it's such a small place.
Yeah.
So I do have to go uphill to get to school. It takes me longer to get to school. I say in school because I am a teacher. I work at school. So it takes me about 14 minutes to get there because the hill is so steep. I do have to walk it up. I take a public walking path. It's a little quicker than taking the street, and I can just push my bike up the steep hill and then I'm at school. But the nice thing is on the way home, I can just fly home.
So the time difference is Probably half,
substantial.
eh?
Yeah, 14 minutes there, probably 8 minutes home.
Yeah, that's great. 8 minutes to get to work. That's fabulous.
It's wonderful. And when I'm at the top of that hill, we live on the water. We live on the Georgian Bay.
Right.
So I'm at the top of the hill. I can see the trees and I can see the water in the distance. It's really beautiful.
Nice.
It's nice to just take a moment and appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because, you find your work day, you just kind of, you're trying to get through it. You're just thinking, one more day, I got this. But it's nice to have an opportunity to appreciate what's around you.
Yes. Yeah. And you guys have, it's beautiful, nice water and hills and paths. And so where do you go for picnics?
So we like to go to a local beach called Kelso Beach.
Yes.
So we live in Owen Sound.
Yeah.
So it's right on the Georgian Bay. It's a beautiful spot. Sometimes when we want to venture on a longer bike ride, we'll put our bikes on the car and we'll head over to Southampton. So between Southampton and Port Elgin, which are on Lake Huron, there's a really beautiful walking or bike path. It's about 8 kilometers.
Wow. That's a good amount, eh? How long does that take you?
Oh, goodness. Half an hour?
Oh, okay. That's great.
Maybe longer. I might be undershooting it because it feels really enjoyable.
Right.
It's right along the water and it's a dedicated walking/bike path.
Right.
So there are no vehicles that drive there. So that it just makes it really nice. And I don't know what it is about the water up there. It looks almost like the Caribbean. It's like blues and greens and there's lighthouses. It's really beautiful.
Nice. And peaceful. And
yeah, the people in the area really seem to appreciate activity. So you see a lot of people jogging, a lot of people walking, a lot of people biking. Everyone's very friendly. It's a wonderful experience.
great. And what do you do once you get there? Port Elgin.
Once we get to Port Elgin, we love to swim.
Oh.
Port Elgin is a really lovely beach. And they have a lot of amenities there, actually. Like they have foot washing stations after you're done.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little gem that we have in Graver, so don't go sharing it around, everyone.
That's awesome.
They also have a great restaurant there, and I believe every Wednesday in the summer they have a little market.
Really? Right in the city?
Right at the beach.
Oh, right on
so
the
they use
beach.
the parking lot
Oh,
of the beach.
wow. That's awesome.
It's really lovely.
Oh, that's great. And then you bike back to Southampton and
Yeah,
then...
load the cars on and away we go back.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, we've also taken our bikes to Sauble before.
Right.
Sauble Beach. It's a nice spot to go biking as well because it's very flat. So you can bike for a long time without hitting a hill.
Yeah, Sawbill's great. Yeah. And what about in Owen Sound itself?
There are some lovely paths right along the water in Owen Sound. So we have an area called the Bay Shore.
Okay.
And so there are some dedicated walking paths and biking paths through there that go all the way to a conservation area.
Oh, nice.
And it's a nice spot. There's not too many hills, just one kind of big one that you have to conquer.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Because
that's also
Owen
a nice
Sound is hilly.
Hilly. I don't know why.
Well, it's a fishbowl.
It is.
If you're going down, you got to get back up again. It's just constantly, especially if you're going across. If you got to go through downtown to the east to west, I guess
Yeah.
it is.
Downtown is in the middle of the bowl.
Yes. So that's okay. It's good exercise. Well, it's great that
Yeah.
you're enjoying your bike so much. Hopefully you'll be able to come back and talk about something else.
I would love that.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. Today was a pretty special day for me, and I call it my rebirth day as opposed to birthday. So after not imagining that I could run 10 kilometers many years ago, on June 25th, 2016, I was out for a run that I was going to plan on doing about 6K, and I said, you know what, let's try and do 10K today. I'd been thinking about training for a while till I could ultimately do 10K, but I just on a whim decided, go for it. And what an amazing feeling when I ran 10 kilometers, something I didn't think I was capable of. By coincidence, I started running 10 kilometers the next week and the week after that. And I tended to include a run of at least 10 kilometers. It was a few months later that I realized, holy cow, I've done a 10 kilometer or more run every week for a few months. Wouldn't you know it, that turned into a year, and then 2, and then 3, where I've been able to do a run of at least 10 kilometers at least once a week. It started to take on a lot of special meaning for me because you really have to be lucky, not just doing the right thing training-wise, not just stretching properly, but you have to be lucky because injuries can come from anywhere. Sickness can come from anywhere. whether it's your fault or not your fault. And if you can run 10 kilometers in a week, that means you haven't been hit with a significant injury or a significant illness for that at least once during a week. And so it got really special because I think to myself, well, not only did it signal a whole change in my life, which is really special to me, that's why I call it Rebirth Day, but it makes me be really appreciative of the luck that I've had, be able to continue this journey without injury or serious illness. Why was today special? Because today, and so every year, if it's the June 25th or later, or that week, if I have my Rebirth Day anniversary of that 10-kilometer run, which is part of a streak, which means I've never not run the 10K, then it's really something to celebrate. Someday that streak's going to end. Someday I'm going to be sick. I did get COVID in April, so that almost ended it, but fortunately it didn't, because it only lasted for me for about 3 or 4 days. So I was able to get a 10K run in, and I actually got it the day after I'd done a 10K run. So I got really lucky there. Someday this streak is going to end. But until it does, Rebirth Day is something I'm going to really cherish and celebrate every year, including today. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin. Hi, everyone. It's Sheila here, back with Flip Side of the Coin.
And John.
And John. I just wanted to bring up something that I heard on the radio the other day, and I found it quite interesting, and I thought it related really well to the podcast. So it was talking about hormones and how they release different activities, release different hormones that really help produce, whole wellness. So I thought we'd talk about it.
Yeah, because I only ever really, I don't know much about it at all, actually, but I don't really think of different hormones. I hear about endorphins when you're running.
Yeah.
But you were saying that there were some other things and never connected with them.
Yeah. So the 4 that he was talking about, one was dopamine.
Okay.
Second one was oxytocin. And I might not be pronouncing these all right, but I'm trying.
Right. No problem.
So dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and melatonin. So I thought I was like, wow. That all makes sense, because in order to be a whole, to be, happy and whole, that you do all these things to make it. But scientifically, it actually does something to release hormones that help you survive the day.
Yeah, or feel good. Because I've heard of something like dopamine. Isn't that something that makes you feel good? Like feel happy or...
Yeah. Okay. So I will kind of go through it. So dopamine is actually, they consider like, it is released if you're happy, but it gets released if you laugh.
Oh.
Yeah. So just by laughing, making jokes, doing things like that, making other people laugh, hearing people laugh, it releases dopamine, which actually makes you happy. Yeah.
Right. I can see that. That makes good sense.
Yeah. So it's often called the happy drug, which is why I guess one of the 7 dwarfs is called Dorpy. Dopamine.
Called what?
Dopey.
Not dope. Okay.
I think he's called Dopey. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not dopamine.
Yeah, but it kind of sounds the same.
I would have thought it would be more like dopey, not too bright.
Yeah, it probably is, because that's how he's related, but still.
Right.
Happy. Okay, so, and then oxytocin. Oxytocin is released. It's the actual, considered the love drug.
Okay.
So it's released by, it can be released by having sex, but it also, touching, hugging, childbirth, that bond that you have, breastfeeding, like a lot of that is, it's released, and it also...
Do you remember what it makes you feel like?
It helps with depression and anxiety.
Oh, I wonder how it does that.
Yeah, so it relaxes you.
Oh.
It calms you. It somehow makes your nervous system react to your body and sends like a calming feeling.
It would be great if we could find somebody who we could interview about this, because it is, it's fascinating. So fascinating.
Yeah, like it's a calming, and it makes sense, right? Because you're with your family, you feel loved, you feel secure. It does that.
Right.
So anyways, serotonin, you actually get through exercise.
Right.
So
I wonder if that's what when they say
runner's high,
endorphins and stuff like that, maybe they're talking about serotonin.
Serotonin. So that's the actual hormone that is released when you exercise.
Okay.
And they call that the running high. And it actually helps pain. It's a natural painkiller, serotonin. Oh. Yeah. So that's why, like, sometimes, like, when my back hurts or if I'm in pain And then I'm like, oh, but once I started getting exercise, like I found it really hard to start moving because of the pain. But once I got moving, I'm like, oh, it really helped. Well, that's because it's a painkiller. It's a natural, it reduces serotonin, which is a natural painkiller.
Maybe.
I'm
very afraid of this episode because we do not know what we're talking about. So nobody take any of this too seriously other than to say it's fun to look the stuff up and read more about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the last one is melatonin, which I thought was interesting too. And this one helps you sleep.
Right. And I've heard of that. And you can even buy melatonin pills at a store. Because I know somebody and they said it's to them, they said it's not like a drug. It's something natural. I take some pills and I don't know if in pill form it really does very much.
Yeah, but you don't have to. What I read was that you can actually produce melatonin by meditating. Doing yoga helps. The relaxation, and often it's darker or calmer. And that's why you shouldn't have your computer screen on or your phone on or your bright lights. Well, be right like within an hour or so, I read, before you go to bed, because you want to produce this hormone because it helps you sleep.
And I've heard people, say that it helps you sleep if you try and find a way to have no light, like so no little blue light or little green light or alarm clock lights on in your room. Maybe that's what it's connected to.
Yeah. So I just thought it was really cool.
No, it is. It's definitely, we could almost, it'd be great if we could have one person who could talk about kind of all these things.
Yeah.
But even if we could find different people to talk about different sides of it, how to fall asleep at night and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because I often feel like exercise does it all, but it doesn't. Right. And when I exercise at night, sometimes I'm teaching late and I come home, I can't sleep. Right. Because, the endorphins have got me excited. And now I can't sleep. I've got to, calm down and do the darkness. So,
It'd be nice to know a few tricks on how to fall asleep naturally.
Yeah.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. All right, well, that's the end of the show, and we have Sammy back from vacation. So instead of us rambling on about what we did this week and last week, hey, Sammy, catch us up on some of the things you did on vacation and how your mindset was.
Yeah, it was amazing. Had such an amazing time. We first went to Crete, and we stayed at an all-inclusive, which was really great. It was a great way to kind of come off the plane, I guess, and just totally relax and have everything kind of ready. I think if I were to go to Crete again, I would definitely want to probably rent a car. The island's so big. We didn't really get to explore the island as much as I would like to, but it was a nice way to start the trip. And then we went to Mykonos, which was amazing, and then Santorini, which was definitely my favorite. And I know it's pretty cliche to say that.
Everybody loves Santorini.
Everybody does. And I kind of thought that it was going to be too hyped up. Everybody's like, it's so amazing. So then I would get there and I'm like, oh, it's not that great. But it really lived up to the hype. We got to do a sailboat tour and got to see the red beach and the white beach and swim in the hot springs of the volcano and watch the sunset at Ia and went on a wine tour. And we really got to explore Santorini, I feel to its fullest, because we were there for 5 full days. Yeah, overall it was amazing, and I already lost my tan. So that's
and how many days had you been on vacation about by the time you got to Santorini?
So we were in Greece for, I believe it was 12 full days, being in the country, and then 2 travel days. So we were gone for 14 days. Santorini, by that point, I think we were there for 3 full days in Crete and then 2 full days in Mykonos. But then there was 2 travel days. So 7 days maybe.
The reason I ask is because if I go on a vacation, it's at least 2 or 3 days before I'm in vacation mode. So it sounds like you are already mentally in vacation mode before you even got to Santorini, which would be amazing.
Yes, definitely. And something else that was really nice is that all of our hotels had pools. So it was so hot. It was really nice to get back and like having a place to relax, where sometimes I know like I really love staying in Airbnbs as well, but sometimes we don't have the same like relaxing feeling. You feel like you always have to be out and doing something. So staying in these like little, you know, boutique hotels, and we really had different experiences in each place, which I really did love. Yeah.
And when you got back here, was everything still okay? You didn't have to...
Yeah, you know, getting back to real life, we went to our house to visit it, and there was a little bit of a flood in the basement. So
oh no, back to reality. There goes gravity.
Yeah, we felt like real homeowners. So what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, back to it. Mm-hmm. Anyways, yeah. How about you, Sheila? Would you?
Well, I had a busy week last week. I worked, and then my mom and I went up to John's parents have a cottage, and they're not able to take care of it right now. So my mother and I went up there, and we gardened so much. We just went up and ate and gardened, and saw Elise and did some visiting and did a lot of gardening. And then I worked a lot. It was a busy weekend. I went to a show, the Symphony Quartet, so that was really nice. Went and did that yesterday. It's just really nice to get out and do those things, you know, that we used to do, and did that. And this week I'm going to be working a lot because I'm taking next week off to go to Newfoundland. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get all my work hours in this week so that I can enjoy the week off with my sisters and my mother. What about you, John?
I had a crazy week at work last week. I had actually a case where I was going to have to argue something in Nunavut, and I live in Ontario. If you look at a map, that's pretty far away, but something happened, and it's one of those things in my world where something comes in and it's a rush. You have to do all the work in a really compressed time frame. So that took up all my time for 2 or 3 days. And then when the dust settled on that, it worked out all right. So it turned out that I didn't have to do the argument because we got things in shape. And then I was busy catching up on the stuff that I'd set on the back burner while I was working on that. Welcome back, Sammy. It's so great to have you back. And we'll have to catch up and maybe start doing a few episodes, and we'll hopefully everyone has a great week, and we'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.